Hello, welcome to Whining About the Law. I'm your host, Deandra Grant. Today we're going to be featuring the wines of Cask Wines, which are located in Sonoma, California. Cask is owned by a family that lives in Dallas, actually the Lakewood portion of Dallas. And Cask is a very exciting kind of up-and-coming wine. We're starting to see it on a lot more wine menus here in Dallas and around the country. I understand they've got a pretty good foothold in St. Louis as well. So if you haven't seen Cask, maybe start looking for it. One of the things I really like about Cask wine is, number one, it's not a very expensive wine compared to many others that I tend to drink. And they have a large variety of wines that they offer. So I've got not the whole line, but a good portion of them here on the table here. One of them that I drink quite a bit of is their Rosé of Zinfandel. It's a very good rosé. It's not bitter. It's got a nice finish, not too sweet. So if you like rosé, this one is a 2018 out of their Grey Palm vineyard. And the palm tree, which I think you'll probably be able to see behind me during the course of this video, is one of the landmarks of Cask. If you ever get out to Sonoma, I would recommend that you make an appointment to go do a tasting at Cask Winery, because they have an incredible view of the valley there. And they also have lovely little areas where you can kind of sit down, have a little snack, have some wine, just enjoy yourself. They've also have some offerings of like some live music and things throughout the warmer months, and so it's a really good place to just go hang out if you're in Sonoma. They make a nice red wine called Invocation. They also make a Cab and a Pinot, but Invocation is my very favorite red wine that Cask makes. This one is fantastic. I buy a lot of this. It's a nice blend. It's got I think a lot of Cabernet, a little bit of Merlot, and then some other things thrown in there for good measure. But I'll tell you what, it is a very nice wine, and it is not a particularly expensive wine. So take a look at Invocation. I don't think Invocation comes out every year, this blend, but I know they've got it on the market right now. 45 Degrees is a Russian River Valley white wine blend that they make at Cask. And if you like Sauvignon Blanc, you're going to like this one. It's a blend of Sauvignon Blanc, but it's very good. My understanding is that Cask has recently changed winemakers, so I don't know if this particular wine is going to stay on the lineup. So if you see it, grab it, because I'm not sure they're going to continue to make this version of this Sauvignon Blanc. They do make a lot of sparkling, which is really nice, because not all of the wineries in Sonoma make a sparkling. One of them is their Blanc to Blanc, and Blanc to Blanc is a Chardonnay sparkling that you can find. It's not particularly expensive or hard to find. It's fantastic. If you like sparkling and you like a Chardonnay base, you're really going to like this one. A lot of people really prefer a Blanc de Noir, a Blanc de Noir, which is a Chardonnay Pinot Noir blend sparkling. This one is very good. It's a great like Sunday morning cooking brunch, having some bubbles, perfect for that. But my very favorite bubbles that they make at Cask is their sparkling rosé. We have a lot of this at our house because I like to drink champagne on weekends when I'm cooking breakfast or brunch for the family. This is fantastic. This is what I've got open here today. So check out Cask Wines. Lovely place to visit. Great wines. Really nice wine club. If you're into joining wine clubs, the Cask sends you just a wonderful box however many times a year you want to get it. So check out Cask Wines. Recently, Cask expanded, so if you've been there before, you definitely want to go back. They reconfigured the whole outside of the property. They've got all these like different little sitting areas so people can sort of have private tastings or events. They also constructed one of the most beautiful wine rooms we've ever seen, and I've seen a million wine rooms. It's all wood, it's full of art, really interesting light fixtures. It's just a great place to do a tasting. So if you have been to Cask before, definitely go back and check it out. And if you haven't been, next time you're in Sonoma, please put Cask on your list. It's great wines and great family. Of the many hats I wear, one of them is that I'm vice president of Living the Doxy Dream Rescue and Sanctuary, which is located in Roy City, Texas. We rescue dachshunds and other small dogs. We have chihuahuas, Chiweenies, Min Pins, all kinds of small animals that we pick up in shelters in Texas. Usually they have been abandoned by their owners, dumped at high kill shelters, or they're just strays. And one of our rescues is this little fella right here. This is Rocket. Rocket is a piebald dachshund. A piebald, if you'll notice, because you may not be familiar with that term when it comes to dachshunds, they have the coloring of like a basset hound or a beagle. And our family has 5 dachshunds. 4 of them are piebald minis, and this is one of them. This is Rocket. My daughter claims this dog is hers. He is one of the sweetest and best dogs one could ever ask for. We love him very much. Down in the credits, you will see a link to our dog sanctuary. So if you're in Texas and you're looking for an animal to adopt, please check us out. We usually post most of our animals on our Facebook page. And if you'd like to donate to the sanctuary, please take a look at that. There's a link for that too. One of the most misunderstood aspects of drinking alcohol is how fast alcohol absorbs into your bloodstream. I find that jurors don't understand the concept, and neither do my clients. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happens to alcohol once you drink it. Obviously, it goes into the oral cavity, it goes into your mouth, and a very, very small amount of alcohol might be absorbed into your system there, but it's going straight down into the stomach, and then it's going to make its way to the small intestine. And the question of how quickly or how slowly alcohol absorbs into your bloodstream is really dependent on how fast or how slow it gets to the small intestine, because that's really the mechanism for absorption. That's where the bulk of alcohol gets absorbed. Maybe a small amount gets absorbed in your stomach, but it's really about the small intestine. So there are things that can make it get to the small intestine faster or slower. For instance, if you're eating food, you are having a hamburger, you're having pizza, you're eating a steak while you're drinking some red wine, then your stomach's going to be breaking down all of that food, and it's going to slow the absorption of that alcohol into the small intestine. But if you're drinking on an empty stomach, you go to happy hour after work, you just drink some beer, you don't eat any snacks while you're there, it's going to get to the small intestine much quicker. There's a little, what you might want to think of as sort of like a trap door at the bottom of your stomach called a pyloric sphincter. And it's closed most of the time, and then it just opens up to allow contents from the stomach to go into the small intestine. And if there's food being broken down in your stomach, then the trapdoor kind of stays shut, and it opens periodically, allowing food to pass into the small intestine. But if there's no food to be broken down, you're drinking some beer, then that's going to open up faster, it's going to move down into the small intestine, and the absorption rate's going to be quicker. So think about that while you're drinking, you're out having, dinner or drinks or happy hour or whatever it is that you're doing. The smartest thing to do is always be eating while you're drinking alcohol. Don't drink alcohol on an empty stomach, especially if you're planning to drive, because that's really where people get into trouble. You'll notice that when you go to happy hour, there's usually food there. They'll have, some flatbread, or they'll have some chips or something along those lines. There's a reason that bars serve food during happy hour. You really need to be eating while you're drinking. As I previously explained, alcohol is absorbed mainly in the small intestine. That's where it goes into your bloodstream, makes its way to your brain, and starts having an effect on you. Right, what I have in front of me right here is an example of a drinking pattern and what's commonly referred to as an alcohol curve. Now, when you start drinking alcohol, very shortly thereafter, it's going to be not just absorbed into your system, but it's also going to start being metabolized and eliminated from your system. So think about alcohol the same way you think about calories. If you eat more calories in a day, you consume more calories than you burn, then you gain weight. If you drink more alcohol than you're eliminating, then your alcohol level in your system rises. And that's what this curve is reflective of. This is the same amount of alcohol being consumed over the same period of time, but what it's demonstrating is the difference in peak alcohol concentrations that are realized on an empty stomach versus one where someone's been eating. So the bottom line here is reflective of time, and this is reflective of alcohol concentration. So you can see that if you start drinking alcohol here on this blue line, and over a period of time you're going to reach a peak alcohol concentration where all the alcohol that you've consumed has been absorbed, and it's going to start being eliminated from your body. And then you'll see how elimination is this blue line all the way here. It takes time for your body to rid itself of alcohol. Now, the red dotted line is the same alcohol consumption over the same period of time, but notice that you never reach the high alcohol peak because the absorption is happening slower because you've got food on your stomach, as we have discussed previously. So this is a very important idea and concept if you're being prosecuted for a DUI or DWI case. Because what happens when you are pulled over and arrested for a DWI, and then they ask you if you will take a breath specimen a breath test, or you will provide a blood specimen to be analyzed to see what your blood alcohol concentration is. Well, what happens is that doesn't happen right there where you're in your car. It happens at some point in the future. Well, then when you go to trial on your case, they've got a number. They've got a blood alcohol level that they're alleging belongs to you, and they're going to try to relate that back to the time that you were driving. But as you can see, the alcohol level's changing. It changes over time, and there are different things that can impact how high your level ever got in the first place. So let's give a little example. There are 3 possibilities when you've got a test result that happens later after the person's been driving and then been arrested. One of them is that you were driving, and I got these little magnets here. So you're driving right here, and we'll use, for example, in this hypothetical, the blue line. You're driving right here, and then you get arrested here, and then later on your blood is taken, and the blood alcohol concentration the state has when they're prosecuting you is exactly what you were when you were driving. That's possibility number 1. Another possibility is that you were driving on the curve more up here, and your alcohol or your blood was taken down here. So when you've got a result here, you were actually higher. Your alcohol level was higher when you were driving the car. Then the third possibility is that you're driving, arrested for DWI, blood is drawn, and the blood is much higher than what it was when you were driving the car. Those are the 3 possibilities, and this is a challenge that the state has when they're prosecuting you for DWI, because you could be any of those 3 scenarios. So if they've got, say, a 0.10 blood or breath alcohol concentration, and you were driving 2 hours earlier, it's very difficult for a state's expert to come in and say where you were on this curve at the time that you were actually driving the car, because you might have been under the legal limit at the time you were driving and not over. And this is one of the challenges that the state has, and one of the things that a knowledgeable criminal defense attorney who regularly handles DWI cases knows and understands, or should know and understand. So the concept is called retrograde extrapolation. That's what the state's going to be attempting to do when they try to go back in time and give the jury some sort of prediction of what you were at the time you were driving. And you need an attorney who understands all of this science so they can go in, and like you'll see, says Defendant's Exhibit 1. This is a board I actually use in trial to explain all of this to a jury. So when you're hiring an attorney, or you've got a case that you're fighting, make sure they understand retrograde extrapolation if you've got a breath or blood test in your case. You may have heard that you can drink a beer and it's eliminated in an hour. A lot of people tell me that. Well, if I just wait an hour, the alcohol's all gone. Well, that may be true. It all kind of goes into the analysis of whether you were drinking a standard drink or not, and that's been covered on a previous episode of our show. But there are other factors that come into play on how alcohol absorbs and eliminates in the human body, and there's really a range when it comes to time. I mean, obviously, any of us that have had alcohol before know that the longer we go after we stop drinking, the less effect the alcohol is going to have on us, because it's being eliminated from our body. But there are different factors that can impact absorption other than just food. There are gender differences. There are body mass index differences. How much fat do you have in your body versus how much muscle. Were you smoking while you were drinking? There's just a long list of things that can impact the absorption of alcohol. And then when it comes to elimination of alcohol, there's no standard rate. There's kind of a range. So you can have a pretty wide range when it comes to absorption because there are so many factors involved, but you can also have a range of time when it comes to elimination. So it's very difficult unless you know a whole lot about the person and their drinking pattern to try to do a retrograde extrapolation analysis. It's not just as simple as saying, okay, I've got a number and this person was driving an hour earlier, so I'm going to just guess that their alcohol level was higher at the time they were driving. It's not that easy. You have to take into account a lot of factors and know a lot about what was going on with that person before you can attempt a retrograde extrapolation analysis. And often if the state's going to try to offer that testimony in a trial, it's up to the defense attorney to challenge it and have a hearing and determine whether or not the person who's going to testify actually has enough information to give that kind of scientific opinion in a trial. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Whining About the Law. If you heard any barking in the background, it was probably this little one. This is Gamora. She's one of our youngest and actually most challenging dogs. She's also a rescue, and she's going to help me sign off today. Can you say bye-bye, Gamora? Yes, I know, I love you too.